Somaieh Ebrahimi. How are you, Somaieh?
Thank you. I'm fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you. She is a social researcher and urban planner. She has a PhD degree in migrants' experience of neighborhood connection and their perceptions to the suburban built environment in Melbourne. She is an Iranian immigrant. So today we will talk about how migration, belonging, place, and how immigrants find their home and their belonging and their psychology behind the place which they call home. So the first question to you, Somaieh, is why you decided to do this research on neighborhood connections for migrants.
Yeah, thank you, Gutam. It's a very good question because I always would like to talk about this as my PhD research didn't come as only as a PhD research. It has been my life story and came from my own experiences. The first time that I thought about migration, belonging, and place was the time that I experienced migration and moving house from my hometown in Iran to Tehran, and then migration to Melbourne. All these changes of places, that's where I lived, and migration and the feeling that I had to the places, and as I wanted to feel belong to a place. It has always been important to myself. I didn't look at that only as a research. This has been my passion that I always wanted to develop and redevelop sense of belonging to where I live. The first time, as I said, this thinking came to my mind when I migrated from my hometown in Iran to Tehran, when I started university to study architecture. And that time, I felt while I had a strong neighborhood connection in my hometown, because I lived in a neighborhood for long, and it was a small town, and we know everyone, and I know all the places in my neighborhood. When I went to Tehran, Tehran was a big city, a much higher population density, and I had to move house frequently. I remember the first years, every year I moved house in Tehran. So after a while, I thought, while I have always been a very sociable person, and I always connected to neighbors and felt connected to the places as well, then I saw I don't have any connections with others, or even didn't feel belong to the neighborhoods that I lived for a short time. That was the first time I thought maybe there is a connection between how is the built environment of a neighborhood and how we develop a sense of belonging to the neighbors and also the neighborhood. Then finally, before coming to Melbourne, before my migration, I lived in a neighborhood in Iran. Its name is Narmak. That it was a good neighborhood in terms of sense of belonging that people have in Tehran, and I lived there for about 6 years. When I lived in that neighborhood, I saw that again I could develop strong connections with people and also places. When I looked at that neighborhood as an architect and urban planner, I saw that that neighborhood had specific built environment characteristics as well. It was a neighborhood that included semi-public spaces of local urban squares that included different activities that we could go there and for example, it had table tennis and different activities we could use every day, and we could meet neighbors every day. We had frequent interactions with neighbors, and we could go for a walk to local shops and use all the social infrastructure and amenities around with walking distance. And so, as an architect and urban planner, this was the second time I thought that now that I live in a neighborhood for long, and this neighborhood has the specific characteristics of the built environment and design, I could develop strong connections. So maybe there is a relationship between the characteristics of the built environment and the built form, and how we develop connections to the neighborhoods and places. Yeah, that was the time that I developed a proposal to do a PhD. And then I got a scholarship to do PhD from RMIT University in Melbourne. And I came here to Melbourne. When I came to Melbourne, again, I saw a very different suburban context that was physically and also culturally different. Again, I thought that the feeling of attachment to the neighborhoods is not maybe experienced in old suburbs, especially outer suburbs, because I thought they were very different from the context where I live that had much higher population density. I saw that suburban environments are mostly very car dependent. They have much lower population density and less chances to meet people. So I decided to see how migrants like myself, that we want here to be our home, how we can develop a sense of belonging and connection to the neighborhoods in these suburban built environments that are physically and also culturally are different, that has much more cultural diversity, and they have even different built environment characteristics. It was these are all the changes that happened in my life that caused me think about this PhD research on migration, belonging, and place.
Nice, very nice. This migration, what it gave you and what it took from you.
Migration has given me a lot, a lot. If I want to say three important things that I achieved through migration, I can say freedom, safety, and self-actualization. I always say, especially as an Iranian woman, if I lived in my home country, I couldn't achieve these as I wanted. But at the same time, I always say in each achievement that I have had in my life, in each moving house, not only migration, even each moving house, while we always achieve a lot of things and we might feel belong to the new environment, as myself, now I feel Melbourne is my home and our new neighborhood is, I think, is my home. I feel belong here. But at the same time, I feel we lose the places and people that we have the sense of connections to them in each movement, not only the migration. And now I think I have all the memories, experiences that connect me to both identities as an Iranian and also Australians. And I feel connected here, but I also have those and acknowledge the losses that I have had.
Nice. Yeah, we all immigrant in that way, and we all definitely get a lot of things, but also lost few things.
It is part
Now,
of migration story. Yeah.
absolutely. How can a suburban built environment discourage our connectedness?
Suburban environment can discourage connectedness if it doesn't help people to connect to where they live, if it doesn't provide opportunities for people to meet others, doesn't provide opportunities or places for people that they can feel included, welcome, and feel attached to that. For example, if you look at outer suburbs in Melbourne or new developments, we can see that there are mostly you should go by car everywhere. There are car parks, and only a shopping center or a park. There are not local shops around, cafes, bars, or restaurants, or different social infrastructure and facilities that for everyday use that you can walk. And through walking in the streets, you can see others, you can meet other people by chance, and you feel that you are part of something. You are part of this community, you are part of this neighborhood. All these that we can see in many suburban environments, especially outer suburbs, feel people, not only migrants, everyone can feel disconnected from the places. But it is especially for migrants because migrants came to the new environment. They haven't built connections yet. They don't have established connections, and they feel, they might feel isolated and detached from the place where they live. I can give an example from myself, my own experience of living in outer suburbs here. As I said, for me, a sense of belonging has always been very important. And I'm a person, whenever I'm in a new place, not only in a neighborhood, even at university, wherever I am, I have always tried to build community, develop a sense of community and sense of belonging for myself and even for others. I have always done that. And I remember when we lived in Kew, in inner suburbs of Kew for about 4 years, maybe I don't remember, maybe 4 years, for 4 or 5 years. And then We during COVID lockdown, I thought maybe it's better to go to a bigger house, to have a backyard, to have a garden, an office for work, because I was doing PhD and my child was at home for a while. It was very difficult to be in a small apartment. And I thought maybe it's good to move house to an outer suburb. And I remember we went to Glen Waverley, and after a week, I wanted to move back to Kew. I can't. I felt very isolated. While I never experienced this in my life because I have always been very sociable and I could easily connect to others. But there I felt really isolated, disconnected from everywhere. Whenever I went for a walk with my son, I told him, let's go back. There is nobody around. And I remember after a week, I emailed the agent and said, we want to move back. We want to finish the agreement and move back. And we couldn't finish the agreement because it was for 1 year. But I remember I was counting the days to move back to Kew. While that was a very beautiful house. It had offices, it had backyard, garden, very beautiful architecture design, as I saw it as an architect. And yeah, but the feeling of not connected to environment and people was a very difficult experience for me. I always remember that, and it was the time that I understood what migrants said, what migrants who came from neighborhoods that they felt connected, they wanted to be part of something, what they said in their experiences and how they might feel isolated and detached, as I also experienced that year.
In your research, you mentioned about semi-public and third spaces,
Yeah.
and you said that they are the training ground for migrants. So please explain that.
Yeah, good question, because it was the main finding of my PhD research, and it was very important, especially for migrants and Iranians who came from neighborhoods that characterized with semi-public spaces of urban squares and alleyways in traditional architecture of Iran and during the history. Semi-public spaces are spaces like local urban squares or alleyways, or that is not very common in Melbourne, but there are these spaces, and also shared spaces. Shared spaces are very common in inner suburbs here in Melbourne, and they are very good, working very well in inner suburbs like Kew, Hawthorne, and other suburbs. There are places like cafes, restaurants, bars, library, community center, local shops. All these spaces, semi-public spaces and shared spaces, help people to have frequent interactions because they are in the same specific neighborhood. Most people that use these spaces live in the same suburb, mostly, usually not everyone, but usually they are people who are in the same suburb. And these places provide them with the chances to meet others frequently. So through these frequent interactions, people can see people from other cultural backgrounds and see how they behave and can know them. So as people who came from another country, another cultural background, when they see how they behave, they know how to respond, they will know others, and they know how to interact with them. Because of that, in my PhD thesis, I said it is like training ground because it helps people to know others.
So it is like little different than the shopping town because in shopping town you have to go alone and then you do your work, and if you are meeting someone you are, and then you are alone come back. But in those spaces where anyway you are heading towards somewhere and then you meet someone, have a chit chat and stuff like that. That's what you were mentioning, right?
Yeah, you're right. And also another thing is usually it happens. We also happens that go to these places for interactions. When we go to shopping center, we don't go for having interactions with others. We usually go to buy something and come back. But when we go to cafes, bars, restaurants, or library, community centers, many migrants in my PhD research and my other works as a social researcher told me that they use libraries, community centers, cafes, bars, these places, especially for knowing others and having interactions. This is the difference that these places have with the shopping center. We only go for buying something and going back. or the streets that are public spaces that it rarely happens that we can develop connections in public spaces like streets.
So when migrants say something is missing here, what exactly are they missing?
It depends on where the migrants came, and it depends on their previous experiences and the neighborhood context where they lived. And as we say in symbolic interactionism, the meaning that we give to things comes from our expectations and our experiences that we have had during time in our life and regarding that thing, if it is a neighborhood, if it is about neighbors. And for example, Iranian migrants came from neighborhoods that characterized with high population density. They usually had nightlife. They usually experienced vibrant urban neighborhoods in the neighborhoods. Not all neighborhoods. I don't say all neighborhoods or now no new development in Iran is not like this. But during the history, I mean, or the first generation of Iranian migrants who I interviewed with, at least in their childhood, they mostly experienced living in these kinds of neighborhoods. So when they came here, they thought something is missing because a neighborhood in their mind had specific meanings. Neighborhood in their minds was a place that they could meet people, they could connect with people. It had higher population density, more chances to meeting others, and possibility to walk in the streets, nightlife, and all these. So when they came to Melbourne, not all the suburbs, as I said, Kew, Hawthorne, many inner suburbs are very good, especially in outer suburbs. They see that, they feel that it's empty of life. They see only cars, car parks, nothing around. And so they think it's something is missing, the meaning that they had as a neighborhood. And also in history of Iran, neighbors and neighborhoods has a special meaning for people. People not only look at neighbors as strangers, people look at neighbors like their family members. They were they had strong connections. And so they thought something is missing when they came here. And not only about the neighborhood or the built environment, also about the kind of their connections. For example, as I said, Iranians mostly develop strong connections with their neighbors, and during the history, Iranians' hospitality is very famous. Yeah, they usually had desire to connect to people, build strong connections, and they had hospitality. When they came here and experienced this suburban built environment that had different physical contexts, and also they saw cultural privacy here, they thought something is missing. I remember one of the people who I interviewed, we said, here in Iran, we usually went to alleyways and we every day saw a lot of people, a lot of neighbors around, and we could talk for minutes with them. But here, there is no alleyways that we know that people who are outside are our neighbors and we have the chance to connect to them. Or another one, for example, said, we cannot be very close to people or ask questions because privacy is very important to them, but we would like to be closer to people, which is not common here.
What is good? Okay, that means like there are more people, there are more social connections. That is better for connectedness and all. So, what is good? More space at home, but less amenities outside compared to less space at home, let's say maybe flat or units, but in a hustle bustle location. What is good for connectedness? I guess definitely the more amenities, right?
Yeah, you're right. We cannot say which one is better if we don't say about connection, because it depends on people's choices, what they prefer. But if we want to talk about connections and urban planning and these things, it's better when people live in smaller homes and a neighborhood that has activity center, all different social infrastructure that people need, like local shops, schools, libraries, community centers, and all these. Because when people live in big houses, they can provide more things that they want in their houses. For example, if they have a kid, kids can play in the backyard. And if there are people who have established network here, They invite other people to their houses, so they don't feel much need to use outside other places. For example, to go to the park that children can play, or playground, or when there is not social infrastructure around them that they can access through walking. And if they have to use cars, they will not feel connected to the outside. When there is chances for walking to social infrastructure, there are activities around, and we have smaller homes, it's much more chances for meeting people every day and have feeling connected to people and also places.
What do you think about community? Because you are predominantly talking about collective community. Where is the line between belonging and being watched happen? Okay, can a connected community
Yeah,
sometimes reduce individual freedom? Because I'm also from India, and
yeah,
sometimes this neighborhood or the neighbors can, it's not fun all the time. So
agree.
what you will say on that?
Yeah, it's a very good question, especially for me as an Iranian woman. Very good question, and as you and I both experience living in neighborhoods that experience strong communities. I can say always, I can say not only based on my own experiences, also migrants' experiences, and even other people not that are not migrants. Community has both sides, positive and negative sides. Community can provide social support, can provide connections for people, can a feeling of belonging to the community and to the neighborhood, to the people around. Especially is important for migrants to feel belong to the new environment. It's very important to feel this. But at the same time, community can have negative sides as well. If we feel that we don't have freedom, we don't have privacy, because people are always controlling you. People always want to know what you are doing, what what's happening in your life. If they watch you, when you lose your freedom and sense of privacy, we cannot say community is good when this happens. For example, Bauman in the book Community Seeking Safety in an Insecure World says that the stereotypes, romanticized stereotypes that we say about community, when we say that community is very good, we usually don't consider lived experiences and negative sides of that. This is very important that we should think about when we talk about the community, not thinking it is always good and supportive, and that we should always have it and thinking about these positive sides.
So that means as long as there is a sense of boundary, as long as there is a sense of privacy there, it's fine. Otherwise, because in India also sometimes we cannot get that, and we cannot imagine to get that.
You're
So
right.
which is
Yeah,
suffocating for sure, some cases.
yeah. I can I can give an example from my own experiences as well. When I was a child living in, as I said, in my hometown, that was a small town. We had an alleyway that we were very connected with our neighbors. Whenever it was an annual celebration, we had gatherings in the alleyway. We were very connected. We went to their home. They came to our house, and it was very good. We played with them, played soccer. And they came to our home. We played games, basketball, different things. But when I went to Tehran, when I remember when I lived in a neighborhood for lunch, it happened a few times that we went to play table tennis there. And once I remember one of the neighbors, she was a woman, and said, told me, why you're playing table tennis? You're a woman and you should go and dance. This was the negative side that I experienced
The
when
stereotypical thing, yes.
the neighbors thought they can control you at the same time that maybe you have support as well.
So when does a neighborhood feel welcoming?
A neighborhood will feel welcoming when people feel included, feel safe, comfortable, and feel sense of belonging. They feel they are part of something and connected to the community and the neighborhood. When the neighborhood has spaces, places that people can go there, meet people, feel connected, and also feel comfortable. They think that their needs and expectations is responded in that neighborhood and also through places. When, for example, when there is a public space or semi-public space near to them, they can go for a walk, they can walk and they go there, and there are activities that are interesting for their age, their cultural background. If for example, if they are girls, boys, men or women from different cultural backgrounds, feel their needs are responded, and they can use these spaces with comfort, without feeling of control, without feeling of discrimination. These are all the reasons that people can feel welcome. And as I talked in my PhD research, walkability, mixed-use spaces in urban planning, and all access to social infrastructure. All these, when people think they have all the spaces that they want and all their needs and differences is responded, and they can feel connected, and especially a sense of belonging to their neighborhood. They feel they are welcome, which is very important, especially in multicultural Melbourne.
So, as you said rightly in the first question, that freedom, security, and self actualization.
Yes.
So, as you are finding it, and hopefully, as long as the other immigrants are finding it, it's basically giving them the belonging, the sense of place, and sense of home. On that, we should end our podcast here. Thank you, Somaieh. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Kutam. It was a pleasure